Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. Hope you're all doing well. I'll get those FRQs graded and back to you. Make sure if you lost points, look at that, double check it. Email me if you have any questions on why you lost points. So now we're going to start moving into the other units, which are going to make up your first question. So just remember, first question on your AP exam is going to be content from unit 1 through 7, and it's going to be 8 concepts that you apply to a prompt, right? And we talked about the idea that since it's open notes, they're probably not going to give you any points for just defining because you have your notes, you can look it up. It's going to be the application part that's most important. So when we go over the unit 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, I'm just going to do like a quick crash course video on really terms that are likely to be on FRQs, that have been on FRQs in the past, and terms that are also maybe a little difficult to understand, or maybe there's two terms that are similar. Like today we'll talk about parasympathetic versus sympathetic, and then at the end of it I'll give you some terms to add to your cheat sheet. Now remember, those terms that you add to your cheat sheet, those are completely up to you. Obviously I gave you the ones for research methods because I know for sure you're going to have one whole question on that. And when you're adding terms to it on your own, just think about terms that you struggle to define, terms that trip you up, and also terms that were in those review packets because those have been on FRQs already. So if I have a list here of terms that I would suggest you add to your cheat sheet for unit 2, and I'll keep adding as we go through the units. Obviously, if if you feel really good about sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system, right, you don't have to put it on there. But if you're someone who constantly gets those two confused, you don't remember the difference between the two, strongly suggest you put that on your cheat sheet. And remember, your cheat sheet is just there so you can have your Chromebook up, you type in, you look at it, you can just look at that sheet rather than having to mess around with tabs and things of that nature. So we'll get in here. So unit 2 was biological psychology. Biological psychology is looking at how the nervous system impacts behaviors, specifically looking at brain structures, neurotransmitters, hormones, and then we also talked about sleep, drugs in this unit as well. So like I said, I'm just going to run through a couple of these, hopefully just to bring this back into your memory. If you want to go ahead and add in, stop the video, add some stuff into, or take terms from here and add it into your cheat sheet, you can do that as well. So remember, the first thing we talked about was looking at the divisions of the nervous system. So the nervous system can get broken down into the central nervous system, which is your brain and spinal cord. Obviously, most important being the brain there, and then the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system is everything outside the center, or the brain and the spinal cord there. And then the peripheral nervous system gets broken down into autonomic, which are automatic behaviors that occur in our organs and glands, as you see there. So the autonomic nervous system will tell your heart to beat, will tell your stomach to digest, all that stuff. And then somatic nervous system communicates with sensory organs and voluntary muscles. Autonomic nervous system, and we'll talk about this next, are sympathetic and parasympathetic. And then for the somatic nervous system, you have sensory nervous system, or afferent neurons, which is going to be a term that maybe you want to add. Those take sensory information in to the rest of your body. So when you touch a hot pan, sensory neurons will take that information to your spine and brain. Motor or efferent nervous system, those are motor neurons which tell your muscles what to do, which makes sense. Motor, right, takes effort, so you can kind of make that connection there. So this is just another way of thinking about it. The biggest one, right, and probably one that we struggle with just because it's two terms that are very similar: sympathetic and parasympathetic. So sympathetic, remember, autonomic is automatic functions that occur in your body. So when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, you rev up or speed up or kind of put the gas on your nervous system. So your heart rate's going to increase, your breathing is going to increase, your blood pressure goes up, your pupils are going to get bigger and let in more light, and you're going to direct energy to your muscles, the extremity muscles like your arms and your legs, and away from the digestive muscles. This is what happens when you're stressed out. When you're stressed out, you're in a stressful situation, your sympathetic nervous system activates. So that's why this sympathetic nervous system is a big FRQ one, because a lot of times it pops up on prompts when someone's in a stressful situation. There was one a couple of years ago in FRQ where you had to apply how the sympathetic nervous system may hinder someone from performing in a musical or something like that. I think it was like an audition. Parasympathetic is in the brake or the parachute, right? Because it slows your system down, returns it to homeostasis. That's what the parasympathetic does, returns you to homeostasis. So it brings your heart rate back down, it brings your blood pressure down, it redirects energy to being able to digest, all that good stuff. Parts of the brain, this was, something that we talked about a lot. Hopefully you understand it pretty good. My suggestion to the parts of the brain would simply be to go through the different parts of the brain, the different terms, and then add the terms that you struggle to understand or struggle to remember to your cheat sheet. So the brain can be broken down into the brainstem, the limbic system, and then the cerebral cortex. The brainstem is the most basic functions. So if you look here, medulla controls breathing and heart rate, right? Everyone needs that to survive. So it's part of the brainstem. Pons does help with sleep a little bit, but it's also a bridge to the cerebellum, so it can coordinate some movements. Reticular formation is alertness and arousal. So that's actually what allows sensory information to go to the rest of your brain. So your reticular formation kind of turns off when you're sleeping. That's why you're not alert, you're not aroused. And then the cerebellum is the little brain in the back, movement and coordination. Thalamus, remember that processes all sensory info except smell. You can't really see it there, but all sensory information but smell. Image there. Limbic system, hippocampus, big one because it's memory. So damage to the hippocampus is going to damage your ability to create new memories, explicit memories specifically. Explicit memories are memories you can express. Those are processed by the hippocampus. Hypothalamus controls the endocrine system because it connects to the pituitary gland. And then Angry Amy, everyone's got that one. And then cerebral cortex, the big one here. Hopefully you remember the frontal lobe, right? That's higher level thinking, judgment, decision making. That's a big one on FRQs because it's an easy one to apply to why people do things. Parietal lobe, touch, temperature. That's why the somatosensory cortex is located there. Occipital lobe, eyes, we're good with that one. And then temporal, think the tempo of a song. You hear that. Temporal lobe's auditory sounds. The other thing that's big, the prefrontal cortex, is just a specific part of the frontal lobe dealing with decision making, judgment, reasoning, impulse control. Broca's area, ability to move muscles. So if you damage your Broca's area, it's going to be like you have a broken jaw. And then Wernicke's area is the ability to comprehend language. So these, hopefully you understand the lobes pretty good. My suggestion would be think about these terms in the bottom row here that you struggle with. Those would be good ones to add to your cheat sheet. Neurotransmitters, talked about those. Once again, I would maybe add in a couple that you really struggle with, and I would give the suggestions I would give, like the big ones that are important and that may show up on an FRQ would be, Okay, so you can see it here. I would do endorphins. I would do dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine. So those are some of the big ones. Maybe you stop the video, write those down on your cheat sheet. Those would be my suggestions. Agonist, antagonist would be a good one too to put down your cheat sheet because they're ones that we struggle with because they're very similar terms. And remember, this is going to be in reference to drugs. All right, so drugs are unnatural chemicals that enter into your brain and can act as agonist or antagonist. And they influence the neurotransmitters that are released in your brain. So an agonist is, you can see here, it poses as a neurotransmitter. An antagonist is it inhibits or it's anti, so it blocks the neurotransmitter from having an effect. So if we go back here, you look at endorphins are an agonist, or sorry, opiates are an agonist for endorphins. That's why when you take opiate drugs, you no longer feel pain. And then the other one that we talked about, antagonist, it's not on here, but adenosine is what's in caffeine. So when you have caffeine, it blocks the ability of, or sorry, caffeine is an antagonist that blocks adenosine. And adenosine makes you drowsy. So when caffeine blocks adenosine from having an impact, it makes you more alert. Drugs, I don't know. It's a pretty small part of the unit, so I don't know if you need to worry about it too much. It's up to you there. Circadian rhythm, I would add this because I guess one thing I think AP might do is they might make a prompt that is related to what you're currently going through with the COVID situation, not being in school and all that stuff. And a lot of you, your sleep schedule is probably completely thrown off because you're actually kind of back to your biological clock. Most teenagers' biological clock is set back later in the day than older people and younger people. So your circadian rhythm is your biological clock that helps determine your 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. And this is what directs us to feel awake during the day and sleepy at night. So I think AP might throw something like this on a prompt in referencing how kids are adjusting to new schedules without being in school. So essentially the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus helps control circadian rhythm because the endocrine system adjusts melatonin levels. Melatonin makes you sleepy. Sleep, I don't know, probably not going to be on there. And then tomorrow we'll talk about sensation and perception. So just kind of to summarize, let me get out of here. These would be terms I think are good to add just because they're ones that are either confusing, very likely to show up on FRQs. And then for the brain structures, I give you those four as probably the big four that we didn't talk a lot about. We probably just briefly went over. So it'd be good to add into your cheat sheet. Email me if you have any questions on Unit 3. What you should do now, obviously add those terms to your cheat sheet. There's a little, I think it's 8-question multiple choice check-in on some of those terms that I think are most likely to be on an FRQ. If you have any questions, email me. Have a great day.